9:31. I'll call the meeting to order. Apologies for the delay. And first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the agenda be adopted as printed and circulated.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Having adopted the agenda, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Minutes and business arising out of the minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the minutes from the May 20th, 2026 council meeting be adopted as printed and circulated.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Nobody submitted for the public comment period. Public meetings and drainage meetings. Can I have a resolution to go into a public meeting regarding a planning application? Councillor Stewart.
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the council meeting be adjourned at 9:32 a.m. for the purposes of holding a public meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act, and that council move into the Committee of Adjustment for the purposes of hearing minor variance applications.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And I will turn it over to Planner McDonald for minor variance application A09-26.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The first application for minor variance before the committee affects property on the 15th line, just north of Thamesford. In this case, it's a agricultural property, approximately 32.5 acres in size. And the application seeks two areas of relief from the township zoning bylaw. One, as it relates to the maximum cumulative gross floor area for additional residential units, and the second relating to the maximum permitted distance between the existing principal dwelling and the proposed additional residential unit. On the plate before committee, you can see the proposed location for the ARU. I would highlight the ARU in this case is proposed to be located within a drive shed, and the issue, which is why the application is before committee today, is just the distance between the two dwellings. So the bylaw does cap the maximum distance between ARUs and principal dwellings at just under 100 feet. In this case, the applicant's looking for 45 meters or 149 feet. Predominantly, it was explained by the applicant that the reason for the increased distance is just that there are trees that have been planted, a couple of rows of trees within the last few years that they would like to not have to move, and also the maneuvering of larger vehicles that they have. The shared driveway, there's a driveway that accesses both the lot to the north and the lot that is subject to this application, and there's some suggested maneuverability issues with traffic coming from the existing building to the north and the proposed drive shed that you see on the plate outlined in green. Staff are supportive of the application today as far as the cumulative GFA for the ARU, which would be approximately 55% of the gross floor area of the existing dwelling rather than 50%. We are not, however, supportive of the increased distance, as we do feel it could be complying with the zoning bylaw, and that 100 feet is more than reasonable in this case as far as the separation between the two. I would also note for the committee, I did not receive any calls or comments from neighboring residents or agency staff indicating any objection to the application. I'm happy to take any questions, and I know Kyle Gledhill is also available to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee for the planner on the report? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. A few questions. And when you look at the plates, the maps that are included, it appears that there would be room to the west of the existing residence where it would be possible to put this building up without taking any farmland out of production. Would, if that was the proposed location, would they need a minor variance for the distance application?
Through the chair to committee member Mitchell's question, the applicant, myself and the building department met with the applicant numerous times on this application in order to explore different options, whether or not they could comply with the 100 feet requirement by placing the structure elsewhere or closer to the existing dwelling. And ultimately, this is the application that the applicants chose to make, in that this represents what it is they want for their long-term needs on this property, including for their own family needs with the ARU itself and some separation between the two residential components, and then the actual vehicular movement in and out of the drive shed, both on their family's property to the north and then on their subject property. Would they still require minor variance? They would, in that it's an agriculturally zoned property, so they would still require minor variance for an ARU. They're still slightly over the GFA as well, so they would still require an application. However, if they met that or were closer to meeting that 100-foot requirement, would likely be a more supportable application.
And if they were to build to the west on those plates, there's the black lines that show the regulatory flood and fill lines from the Upper Thames. Would that have any impact on their ability to build in that location if they chose to?
Through the chair, the applicants would not be able to build within those black dotted lines. Those are regulatory limits from Upper Thames, so I shouldn't say they wouldn't be able to. They would require clearance from Upper Thames, and based on my correspondence from Upper Thames on this and other files, they likely would not be supportive of something within their regulation limit. Secondly, given that this structure is a drive shed and will, in addition to their personal vehicles, will house some agricultural equipment for maintaining their property, I can understand why the applicant does not want that in the front yard, and rather has opted to put it closer to the similar structure on the property to the immediate north.
And last one, Spencer, this one, it's a bit unusual in that planning is supportive of one part of the application but not supportive of the other. So what are our options here? Could we approve both applications? We could approve one and deny both, or is there a possibility of a deferral? Lots of options there.
Yes, through the chair, I would agree there's lots of options. The committee could approve the application entirely or approve part of the application as the recommendation suggests. If the applicant was able to bring it closer than that 149 feet, if that was an issue for committee, that could be discussed with the applicant. He's here to speak to that today, so yes, you have many options with what you could do.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for the planner on the report? Thank you. Does the applicant wish to speak to their application? Just hit the little button, make sure the red light is on.
Good morning, Council. Looking at other options, this really is the only location I would want it. Where Mr. Mitchell proposed, it's a hill going down, it gets close to the floodplains. It's really out of the question. Behind, I wouldn't want to, Spencer even suggested that we could maybe relocate the trees, which would leave more room for moving vehicles around. My concern with that is that it would prevent future things down the road as far as maybe like a pool in the backyard, something like that. It would definitely restrict a lot of area there. I don't know if you have any other questions or ideas.
Questions for the applicant from the committee? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So the planner spoke to some trees that would have to be moved, as well as you've just mentioned future plans for potential pool or use of the yard space. My question is about the large vehicle movement and the position. Can you speak a little bit more to if, even bringing it in a couple of meters, how that would, aside from the trees and the potential for a pool, what impact a couple of meters could have on the logistics of your property and the use of what you're looking to achieve?
So I already moved it. Like the ideal location for it would probably be another 50 feet further away. I'd probably be 200 feet. That would line up with my brother's shop behind. It works better with the shared driveway that we use. I could try. So I already brought it ahead. Spencer suggested maybe moving a few more. I did agree with him. I could maybe do a few meters, but I don't, it'd be, to me, it'd be irrelevant in what it would gain. And it's just looking into the future as far as I'd like room for, just to keep it looking right, that there's lawn, that those trees are still there, that there's division. Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant from the committee? I have one, along the lines of Councillor Mitchell's question for the planner a minute ago. Not knowing how they're all going to vote, because I don't, would you be interested in a deferral if it looked like they were going to not approve, to explore other options, rather than getting it turned down and then having to reapply and explore it again?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you guys don't think it works, then I'll accept that. But
Okay.
it's really it's something that we've been thinking about for a while. It's about the best options we can come up with as far as, I mean, it's somewhere I plan to be forever. I kind of plan for it to be that way and future things down the road. So.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thanks very much. Are there any members of the public here who wish to speak to the application? Nobody virtually? All right, so then, do I have a motion from Councillor?
Moved by Stewart, seconded by Gregg, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application file A0926 submitted by Kyle Gledhill and Alicia Coote for lands described as West Part Lot 3, Concession 10, East Missouri, in the Township of Zorra, municipally known as 155150 15th line, as it relates to 1, relief from Table 5.4.2.3, provisions for all additional residential units, to 1, increase the maximum permitted cumulative gross floor area from 50% of the gross floor area of the existing dwelling to 55% of the gross floor area. And further, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application file A0926 submitted by Kyle Gledhill and Alicia Coote for lands described as West Part Lot 3, Concession 10, East Missouri, in the Township of Zorra, municipally known as 155150 15th line, as it relates to 2, relief from Table 5.4.2.4, provisions for detached additional residential units, to 2, increase the maximum permitted distance between dwellings from 30 meters to 45 meters.
As the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I think overall this is a very reasonable request. I think we're looking, and I appreciate the planner's comments specifically on the ARU rationale. I think we're looking at, this application is obviously tied to development of not only the ARU but also the shop. The shop could, in theory, if it was built as a standalone structure, could be built really anywhere on this property within reason, further away potentially. I think the applicant's use of the overall area and tying the two things together, he's made some sacrifices by tucking it in a little bit closer. I think this is still very secondary to the principal dwelling, and I agree with the future planning reasons that the applicant laid out as well.
Is the seconder?
I think anytime we're going to take agricultural land out of production, we have to be, very diligent in our roles here in terms of approvals. Having said that, looking at the landscape here and how much would be lost, it is, I think, fairly minor in impact. So I will be also in favor of supporting this today. I think an important piece that Councillor Stewart mentioned was that if it were just the accessory structure itself, those permissions are a little bit more flexible. And if including an additional residential unit makes it more difficult to achieve, you also run the risk of dropping that component of the application, which I think, if that ARU is part of it and able to be reasonably allowed, then that is housing. That will, the specifics around what they're looking to achieve within their family or who will be residing there, that's for them, but that will free up residential space within, hopefully within Oxford County that will create housing for someone else. I understand the policy framework in terms of putting these things as close together as possible to keep farmland in production. But having the policy shift where we're putting accessory structures in the front yards, I don't think is the intention of what the policy is. So this is minor enough in nature that I'm comfortable in supporting this today.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I was unusually torn on this one because it's on one hand, I'm a very strong supporter of landowners' rights and that they should be allowed to do with their own property what they want to do. On the other hand, I'm also a strong supporter of not taking farmland out of production. And we have made a couple of exceptions on the distance, which were much greater than this. But in both of those cases, they were in the north end of the township, rural properties, where there was specific issues with those two properties. One was that there was, I think, some bush and some low land in between the primary residence and a field that was technically farmland but hadn't been farmed in 20 or 30 years, so it wasn't going to take farmland out of production. The other one is the one that we approved a couple meetings ago, where there was the rural residential lot kind of stuck in the middle of the farm, and the applicant did make a compromise. And the two options there was we either took cropland out of production or we took pasture land out of production, which are both agricultural usages. So those were unique. This one was less unique to me, but I drove by that property this morning and initially looking at the map, I thought going to the west of the building was an option, but it drops off quite sharply, and I can see why, even though the driveway to this property is a secondary driveway coming off of line 15, it still would put this building in front of an existing structure, and I can understand why they don't want that there. And if they were to move the proposal another 50 feet closer from where they're proposing it, it would not require the minor variance for distance. It would still require minor variance because it's a agriculture ARU, but we're talking about taking 50 feet times whatever. Well, that's a minuscule amount of farmland out of production. So I think based on all those things, let the landowner do what they want with their property wins out over my other strongly held belief, and I'm going to support the motion to approve this application.
Anyone else? I'm equally torn on this, and before this debate, I was like leaning towards not approve, because I think, you know, sometimes there's just cases where I think we shouldn't approve an ARU. Like sometimes it just doesn't work. Because we want ARUs doesn't mean they work on every single property everywhere, and that they can and should work on every property. Sometimes they don't. That being said, you know, there are exceptions, and I think I'm sort of 51% in favor of approving this kind of thing. Like I don't like it, but I think it's reasonable, I guess. I do think that I mean, I'm not very big on worrying about the precedents that we set as a council, because, you know, under the Planning Act, each application is supposed to be considered on its own merits and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think I have a worry about creep on this, right? That over time, ARUs move further and further away, and it's like, so functionally what you've got is now a second residence on an agricultural property, which is absolutely explicitly not what an ARU is to do. And I really worry about that going forward, that's what happens. And there's a whole bunch of really good planning reasons that we don't do that, and one of those reasons is that somewhere down the road somebody says, you know what, we'd just like to sever it now. It's kind of functioned as a separate property for a long time, and we need to sever it. So I really worry that this is creeping towards that. But that being said, I think it's exceptional enough that I can support the motion on the floor to do it, even though I don't love it. Anyone else before I call the question? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So I would encourage you to follow up with the building department on next steps before you proceed with anything, okay? All right. And now I will turn it over to Planner McDonald for minor variance application A10-26.
Thank you. We're just going to the other side of 15th line now. The second application for minor variance seeks relief from the provision of the township zoning bylaw as it relates to the minimum distance separation requirements for livestock barns and manure storage structures. In this case, the applicants are seeking this relief in order to establish a new poultry barn. The second plate on the screen before committee shows the existing buildings on the property and the approximate proposed location. It's a little bit small there, but the approximate location shown in green for the new poultry barn. In this case, the minimum distance separation requirements are from that existing RE lot to the north, as shown on the screen, and the requirement is for 130 meter setback based on the capacity of the proposed barn. In this case, the applicants are proposing a reduced MDS setback whereby they would meet 105 meter setback rather than the 130. Represents approximately a 19% reduction in the required MDS. As a result of circulation, there were no comments received from agency staff indicating any issues with this. I will note for committee, however, within the last day and a half, I did receive 2 phone calls from neighboring residents about the application. One being the owner of the A1 lot, as shown on the screen to the immediate north, and they were just concerned or had a question if they were proposing to build, for example, an ARU in the future, a detached ARU, would there be an MDS issue, which there would not be, as the relief here, based on the capacity of this barn that they're proposing, necessitates that 130 meter setback. So the lot north of the RE lot would be beyond that distance and would not have an MDS issue. The second call I received was from a neighboring resident who had concerns surrounding the manure storage, not only within the barn itself, but the operationally how the farmer uses the manure storage. So if they, with bedded pack, typically be scraped out of the barn and used elsewhere on the site or moved to a different structure on the site. In this case, the farmer actually transports it off-site and places the manure elsewhere, not on the subject property. I did speak with the farmer about that. He's happy to address committee if there are any questions about that, but as a reminder for committee, the manure storage, other than the MDS impact of that, is not the jurisdiction of planning staff certainly, or this council. So I did just make it clear to the person inquiring that the ministry would be the responsible contact for that type of inquiry if there is a concern about the placement of manure or inappropriate spreading of manure, for example. Staff are supportive of the application here today, and the applicants are also in attendance if the committee has any questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the planner from the committee on the report? Not seeing any. Does the applicant wish to speak to their application?
Okay, I'm Bill Simonek. My wife Betty Simonek is the applicant for this application. There's a picture of the evolution of that farm from 1991 to 2012. There was no comments from the committee on the manure storage, but I'd like to alleviate any concerns about it. We have a nutrient management plan that was adopted, accepted, and the manure is taken off-site to, we have 5 farms that we try and rotate the manure to try and augment nutrient requirements for the fields. Other than that, so in the last picture, the bottom picture, the 2012, it shows the configuration of the existing chicken barn, and in 2020, I think the poultry industry moved to modular transportation and required the load-out doors for the second story of that barn to be roll-up doors, and they use modulars that are usually have 250 to 300 birds on each modular. So these trucks aren't as agile by barns, so we had to increase the width from the existing barn to where the straw storage or the bank barn is. And so with the idea of this new barn is that those trucks can still utilize that area to back in. And the idea of the modulars is that they would come out of the new barn, turn in the area that's from the crop to the back of the bank barn, and could utilize that. And otherwise, if we got pushed back farther, we'd have to take up more cropland, both for the transport trucks and for the new barn. So that was the reason for the minor variance request. So that's it.
Questions from the committee for the applicant? Not seeing any. Thank you.
Yeah, I know that from previous experience on council, if it's a positive report, you're not supposed to say anything, but I had to say a few words. So.
Are there any members of the public, either here in person or attending virtually, who wish to speak to the application? All right. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application A10-26 submitted by Betty Semenik for lands described as Part Lot 3, Concession 9, East Missouri, Parts 1 to 3, Plan 41 R7999, Township of Zorra, and municipally known as 155169, 15th line, Township of Zorra, as it relates to: Number 1, relief from section 7.2.1 and 7.2.2 minimum distance separation requirements for livestock barns and manure storage structures to reduce the minimum distance separation requirements to the nearest type A land use, residential dwelling located at 155171 15th line, from 130 meters to 105 meters, to facilitate the construction of a new livestock poultry barn with indoor bedded pack manure storage on the subject property, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that the relief granted by the committee regarding application A10-26 shall apply to a new livestock barn at an approximate location as illustrated on plate 3 of report number 2026-176 to the satisfaction of the Township of Zorra, file number A10-26, report number CP 2026-176. And number 2, that is happens on the long ones. Number 2, that there we are. That a survey sketch be provided to the satisfaction of the Township Building Department confirming the measurements from the barn to the nearest neighboring dwelling.
As the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
I'll keep it brief. Yeah, no, this is I think, easy to support. The report's recommendation for approval, I think, provides the justification. It's always nice to hear from the applicant whether it's, required or not. And actually, my one comment is just thanks to the planner for highlighting that, when concerns come up on applications like this from neighboring residents, sometimes the nature of the concern is outside of the jurisdiction of this committee and or this council, and therefore is not part of the consideration. So I just wanted to recognize and appreciate that when the jurisdiction is not ours, that resident is provided the information in terms of where their concern can be taken if there is some relevance in that concern.
As the seconder? Councillor Mitchell?
I had no conflict on my support for this application. It's consistent with our previous decisions. Percentage-wise, is a reduction of MDS2 distances at 19%. It is the second smallest reduction we've been asked to approve. as the applicant just showed us with the pictures and in his presentation, there's been existing poultry barns on the site for several decades. The location of the new barn produces minimum or no increase in odor. Solid inside bedded pack is rated very low odor potential in the provincial MDS document. And as was said, that once the manure is removed from the barn, it is taken immediately off-site. There will be production efficiencies by locating in this spot, as the applicant expanded on, as far as existing infrastructure, the need for laneways and also a minimum extension of utilities. And by locating next to the existing barns, there'll be minimum loss of cropland. So happy to support this application.
Anyone else? Yeah. All is in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So I would just remind you to follow up with the building permit before proceeding, and then everything should be good to go. All right? Oh, absolutely.
As the unofficial statistician for barn approvals, we have now approved 9 barns for a total of 308,574 square feet so far this year, and I think that's something this council or committee, whatever we are, should be very proud of.
Can I have a resolution to come out of the public meeting, Deputy Mayor?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that council move out of the Committee of Adjustment and pursuant to the Planning Act, that the public meeting be adjourned at 10:02 a.m. and the regular meeting of council be called back to order.
Is there any discussion? All is in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And before we move on to the next item in the agenda, I want to ask Chief Cascanet if he would like to make an announcement to council and to the public.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Before you today is an appointment bylaw for approval. I guess the bylaw actually represents more than just a simple appointment bylaw. It represents a collaboration between 2 townships. It does a few things. One, it removes me as the acting fire chief for Zorra, so I'll become your full-time fire chief. And secondly, and probably most importantly, it names or appoints Jeremy Wallace, a very, very familiar name to many of you in council chambers today, as the deputy fire chief for Zorra Township, which we are extremely excited about. Personally, I can say I'm very excited. We went through a very competitive process. There were a number of significantly qualified applicants, and the board selected Jeremy Wallace as the deputy fire chief for the township of Zorra, of which we are extremely proud. And I wanted to bring him here today to obviously introduce him to council, but make this formal. His wife, Casey, has joined us in the gallery as well. So with that, we are happy to take any questions. And Jeremy, if you'd like to make a few comments, please go ahead.
I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity, and I can't wait to work with each one of you. Okay.
Any comments or questions from council? Reminding you that there is no motion on the floor, so we're not debating anything, but also we want to be welcoming and polite. Councillor Mitchell.
I just want to congratulate Jeremy. I've known Jeremy since about 2010 in our various roles, where I was in Uniondale and he was in Tempsford, and we worked together on a number of things. And in my early years as a firefighter, your grandfather, Joe Wallace, was the highly respected and longtime chief of Tempsford, and he was instrumental in getting the Uniondale Fire Department up and going 50 years ago. And so I was very happy to see that a Zorra applicant was hired, and I'm sure that you're going to bring not only a lot of family tradition, but a lot of personal experience to the job. So congratulations, Jeremy.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor.
Being careful, as there's this isn't reconsideration of previous decision or a motion on the floor. When we were presented with the idea of changing the structure for our fire department, for the leadership, change is always hard, and I think, you know, my biggest concern in that decision, in the change, was losing our local voice and our ties to our community, our roots, and our future. And with all due respect to our, you know, the temporary coverage that we had from the leadership from SWACS and now our shared fire chief, you know, that concern of that local flavoring for our fire department was something that I was, you know, still a little bit concerned about. I think if I've learned anything in 7.5 years of sitting in this chair is that, you know, the fears and what can come with change, you really have to lean into the excitement around the opportunities that can only be born out of change. So, you know, while I still took that decision very seriously and was a little bit, you know, white-knuckled through it, today is the relief that I think us as decision makers were really hopeful was coming. I am so excited about this appointment. I think, you know, Fire Chief said it best in the word collaborative. This is a collaboration, and the two strong leaders I see before me are reflective of what our both of our communities will benefit from in our fire service. So congratulations. I don't doubt that it was a highly competitive process, and I am not surprised one bit to see you sitting in that chair, and I look forward to passing that bylaw later in the meeting. And thank you, Fire Chief, for your work in helping get us to this point so that we can go to sleep at night with the comfort of knowing that we are well protected here in Zorra.
Anyone else? Councillor.
Not a lot to add. Congrats, Chair. Happy to have you in that seat. I think a lot of what Councilor Mitchell and the Deputy Mayor said, I could repeat, but the last thing that you mentioned, I think another thanks as well to Chief as well for his time covering the role and getting the right applicant in place as the deputy here. It was a longer road than maybe anticipated, but I think we ended up with the right result.
Anyone else? I know there were a lot of concerns from different people in both SWACS and Zorra Township and different fire halls and firefighters and residents about this whole new service delivery model and local representation and are we losing control and things like that. And certainly happy to have you in that role as a Zorra resident. But I think that the primary thing that I would suggest that council and the community should focus on is that when somebody does have a day, whether it's a structure fire or a motor vehicle collision, they don't really care who's coming or where they're coming from. They just want someone to show up. They want them to show up fast. They want them to be well trained. They want them to be well equipped. They want them to be able to deal with the situation. So to me, the primary concern was always, do we have the best policies and the best people that we can have, no matter where they're from, to deliver that service on that day that somebody has a bad day. And with this bylaw that we're hopefully going to pass later on, I am absolutely confident that we're going to do that. And in the end, you know, I think notwithstanding the fact that we're all great people and we're all trying hard, on that day when somebody has that structure fire or a motor vehicle collision, nobody's going to care who their counselor was or who their fire chief was. They're just going to care that they got looked after, and I think that's what we've done now, is made it so that we've put the things in place for them to be best looked after, and that's absolutely the most important thing. So thank you for stepping up, both of you. All right. Now we will move on to item 7, delegations, Senior of the Year and Volunteer of the Year awards. Pretty easy part of the job for council, I would suggest, is getting the opportunity to acknowledge people who've contributed to their community. People who said they're just willing to do their part, which is the township's motto, and say, I'm gonna do stuff. I'm willing to do it, and I'll do it unasked for, without pay, just that it's of value to my community, and I'm able, so I will. And the first one is the Senior of the Year, Doug Turvey, who anybody who's moved around Zorra Township for any length of time at all will have met Doug at any number of events. You know, I've sat down and had a meal with him I don't know how many times in Embro. In particular, some of the things that Doug has done for his community are as longtime volunteer and actor at Thistle Theatre. volunteering on the Embro-Zorra Agricultural Society board and contributing to the fair every year. Ingersoll Pipe Band, anybody who's been to any parade in Oxford County at any time in the last few decades, the one keeping the beat and frequently the marching rate of the entire parade, not just the band, is Doug. The town crier. In that role, I think was the town crier the first time I was inaugurated to Zorra Council in 2014, and when I was mayor in 2018, I think 18, yeah. As the country geek, offering, you know, technical services, I mean, as a business, but still offering technical services in a rural area where there was nobody else offering those services. There simply was not anyone else to do that. And we had someone, you know, in little old Zorra Township on a side road offering technical services. And through that, then the volunteer aspect of the electronics recycling, which again, at that time that was offered to begin with, was really hardly available anywhere else. It was really challenging to get that kind of stuff done. But Doug stepped up to do it. And one of the ones that was literally, and I remember former Mayor Lupton talked about this, the crier flyer was literally on every single fridge, right? With a magnet on the fridge, because that's where people were like, what's going on? I heard a thing about that. I'll go get the crier flyer and I'll flip it over. Or where's my counselor's phone number? Or when's that event? Or whatever. And that was that crier flyer, which again was done, you know, just because how do I communicate stuff to my community, my little small rural community that doesn't get a newspaper, doesn't get TV coverage, doesn't get radio coverage, but people still want to know what's going on and who to talk to. And so there was that two-sided one pager that was reliably, you know, there to put on the fridge and say, well, if I don't, it's either on there, or if it's not on there, there's somebody on there that I can contact and find out what my question is. And I think, you know, Doug's moving on to a different stage of his life now where some of those things aren't happening anymore, but some of those things are. And you are to be applauded for everything that you have done and continue to do for our community. It is, I think everybody contributes to their community in some way, but I think it is a rare thing for someone to leave a mark on their community and say there are literally things that happened in the community that not just that you contributed to, which is to be applauded, but there are things that have happened in Zorra Township that would not have happened had you not been there. There was nobody else who was going to do the crier flyer. There was no one else who was going to be the town crier. Like, those were things that were Doug Turvey things. Would not have happened at all, right? And I think that is a genuinely rare thing. You are to be applauded for that. You are to be thanked endlessly for that. And I would encourage you, as I think the rest of your community should and is, to keep doing the things that you're willing to do, because it will continue to be valued by our community. So I want to have you come up here so I can thank you in person. And thank you. That's awesome. Anyone else want to add anything? Councillor Mitchell.
Congratulations, Doug, and I'm so glad to see that you've overcome your natural shyness to contribute to the community.
I just wanted to say congratulations, and through all my years of growing up in Zorra, you're a smiling face that I see at many events, and like Marcus said, he highlighted the town crier, the ad that you did, the flyer that you did, and we, as residents of Zorra, appreciate everything.
And next up, Kel Surprise, Volunteer of the Year award to Doris Weir, who, as we have just seen, is literally everywhere in the township taking pictures of whatever is going on. And again, I think I should have pointed this out for Doug as well, but one of the things when I looked at both of these that I really like, that I see as a change in my time on council, is Embro and Thamesford are still very much their own communities, and they should be, because they are their own communities and unique communities. But they're all part of Zorra Township, and both of you, in your own ways, have bridged that gap, though, and been willing to go that extreme distance, the arduous journey between Embro and Thamesford for various events that you have both attended. And Doris certainly has been willing to do that, because she doesn't just take pictures in Thamesford. It's all over the township, right? I mean, and has reached out with the Lions as they've tried to reach out beyond the village to larger areas of the township and say, we can do good for people in Embro and we can do good for people in Kintore. And when the Lions were there doing that good for those communities, Doris was there taking pictures of it all. And that's how we know about so many of those things. The Trojans have had, I would certainly characterize it myself as a reinvigoration over the last sort of 3-4 years anyway, maybe a little bit longer, for a whole bunch of reasons. A whole bunch of different volunteers have joined in to say, let's reinvigorate this thing. It's a value to our community. Let's do more with it. Let's make it better. And a large part of that is the phenomenal photography that shows up on the social media accounts of the Trojans that make it like in your face, like hockey is happening. It makes you want to go. Unfortunately, sometimes Doris has to take pictures of the mayor at the arena and do the best she can with the material she has for those photographs. And I applaud you for your efforts. But I think also, I've talked already about her volunteer time with the Lions, which is beyond just the photography, but just volunteering and, cooking and going to the meetings and deciding what they're going to do and fundraising for the things that the Lions do and everything that Lions do. A little slice of that is yours. Similarly, to what I said about Doug, there are things that happen only because people say, I'm here to make that thing happen. If they weren't there to make it happen, it wouldn't happen. And I think, then it goes down to all the events that you've been to around. Like, I know I've seen you at the fair in Embro and at the Beachville Museum car show. Again, places all over the township, just stepping up, doing your part to say, I think my community is a good place. I think people deserve to know about my community. I'm going to take pictures of it and share it with my community so they can be proud of themselves. And I think that's a pretty big gift to give to your community, and doing your part is to say, you're all pretty good people. Look at you. Look at what you're doing, right? And I think that's what your photography does for our community, is highlights for people like, yeah, look at me doing a thing there. Somebody took a picture of me. It makes people feel good. And I think when people volunteer, they do it for their own reasons, but I think it's a perfectly legitimate thing for them to get a bit of positive feedback for their volunteering. And in your volunteering, you give those people that positive feedback on their volunteering, which encourages others to do their part, which is then how we get so many things done in our communities. So I applaud you, and I want you to come up here and get your thank you.
It's not going to be a selfie.
Give them instructions.
Those will be the good ones. Here.
Thank you so much. I enjoy the community and I love giving back by doing my photography and it showing what the community is all about. Because if it wasn't the photos, it was, it's the people that do it. But I love the idea of portraying, what our community is all about in my photos. So I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyway, Deputy Mayor.
You didn't give us a chance to add into it. So I'm gonna after the award, I'm gonna add into it. So I think, it's worth mentioning, all the photography really helps encourage us to continue participating and helps build who we will become in the future. But Doris has such an interest in local history and does tremendous work through supporting the Beachville District Museum and her active participation on the Historical Society. I think the thing about Doris is that as she moves through her life, she quickly identifies the ways that she can contribute, and she 100% of the time acts on that. almost to the point of comedy, where, you know, she's here to receive her award, but the award before her, she's like, you know what, I can document this. So whenever there's an opportunity to participate and give back, she will always do it to the point of comedy. And one really quick story, you know, she's now so heavily involved in supporting the local sports organizations. She's taking all of our sports photography. She's there documenting all things at all times. She's getting it from every angle. She's up in a tree. Oh my gosh, she did the Harrington photo, the 100 years, and she was up in a, I don't know if we're allowed to say it online, because I don't think... She was tethered. But she was up in the boom of a truck to get this photo and going that extra mile. And I was at, last summer, I was at soccer, Thamesford Soccer, and the kids were all playing. And as the soccer game was going on, there was a small plane that kept circling over the fields and around the village, and which sometimes happens. And I looked at my partner Ryan and said, do you think Doris got a Groupon for a small plane? Because if that plane is taking aerial photos of this soccer field, it's Doris going the extra mile just to get that shot, to make sure that the community has, you know, a way of celebrating today, but also documentation for historical purposes. So I'm sure that wasn't you in that small plane, but I think, you know, that sentiment that you go the extra mile, I'm often laughing at just how many places and spaces I see you in strange positions to just sort of be able to contribute to back to your neighbors. So thank you very much.
Anyone else? Councillor.
Yeah, congrats, Doris. Two things I wanted to recognize. One, on the historical side, all the efforts for memorializing Harvey Beattie and as a past member of the community. I think that was a really important initiative. And the other thing is we can see your contributions to the community here. My kids know you by name just from seeing you at all the photos and the Trojans games and that. So I think you're representing the community beyond the people that would recognize you to, you know, right down to children. And I think that is notable and commendable.
Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, congratulations, Doris. And I was going to mention about the heights you went to get the photo in Harrington, but Katie beat me to it, and I'm just glad that you got down safely. The one volunteerism that hasn't been mentioned is your support for Charlie for all those years as a volunteer firefighter, because that's a level of volunteerism that most people don't see and carries its own challenges as well. So congratulations.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back in here at like 10:35. 10:35, I'll call the meeting back to order, and the next item of business is item 9.3, Financial Services Report 2026-056 from the Tax Collector regarding the 2026 tax adjustments Quarter 1. Tax Collector DeLuca, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
Yes, please. While this report is for information purposes only, I just would like to note that historically this report has been presented on an annual basis, but we will now be presenting on a quarterly basis to provide better service in a more timely manner.
Thank you for highlighting that, because I missed that until yesterday when I was preparing for the meeting, that it was for the quarter. Questions from council on the report? Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stewart, that report 2026-056 from the tax collector be received and filed for council's information.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9.4, Legislative Services Report 2026-054 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding business association and next steps. CAO Larder, is there anything you want to highlight for council before I ask them for questions?
No, there's nothing else to highlight. Happy to take any questions.
Questions from council on the report? Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Finch, that report 2026-054 from the Chief Administrative Officer be received and filed for council's information, and that council approve the recommendation to proceed with option 3 hybrid/supported association model for the establishment of a Zorra Business Association plan strategy.
As the mover, do you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, I think we've had some good discussion on this topic, and this has sort of been a long period of transition and you know, building some vision for what can be supportive for our communities as they grow. I think, you know, the report highlights the different approaches that can be taken in terms of how the municipality inserts ourselves or stays completely out of supporting this type of initiative. And I'm in full support of a hybrid model. I believe that for our businesses to have meaningful supports and guidance, that there will be some support required. But in terms of a business association or something similar being viable in our communities, there has to be that buy-in from our local members, and I believe that this method is sort of that sweet spot of providing enough support without facilitating the entire thing. And the other thing that I'm mindful of is what the staff time and financial implications for the budget will be part of this, and I was not interested in that being significant. So what I'm looking for is something that's going to help promote the long-term viability of you know, the economic development of our village cores, and you know, leverage the benefits of what work is being done right now through ROEDC. And this is, I think, enough of an investment to see some return on that investment without being significant and a tax burden at budget time.
Councillor Stewart, Councillor Finch is a seconder, apologies.
I've reached out a few times trying to get a BIA out in Embro, and you know, it's difficult with everybody trying to find their time. So I'm hoping that this hybrid model is something that the businesses in the community, you know, hopefully will think is a positive thing and move forward with trying to work together with us.
Anyone else? Councillor Stewart, then Councillor.
Yeah, I'm in support of this. I think this is something we've been working towards for a while to help support maybe not only the local businesses within the cores, but also the greater business community within the township. I think that it's also an opportunity for staff with some effort, acknowledging that there will be some staff time put towards this to set it up in a structured way, but that's what was needed, and that's what will be needed for it to be successful, to also inventory some of the assets and efforts that were taken on by the former Tempsford Business Association, and allow for either businesses or volunteer groups to step up and take over some of those programs.
Councillor Mitchell.
I'm going to be the contrarian on this. I don't support the option number 3 for a couple of reasons that were in the report. It says receive structured support from the municipality. Structured support means staff time, means staff costs, which will come out of the budget as referenced by the deputy mayor. The other line in there was allow access to public funding without full oversight, which concerns me. I think the best way that the municipality can support business is to keep tax increases to a minimum and to make business-friendly planning decisions that apply to all township businesses. And I think by supporting a specific business BIA, we risk picking winners and losers. If we support the BIA in Thamesford, we should support and work to establish a BIA in Embro. And then what about all the other businesses spread out around the township? I don't think that's what where we should be going. I support option number 2, which is an independent business association, and I think the municipality, if that puts the onus on the businesses to take the lead on this, and I think municipalities should be limited to collaboration, partnership on initiatives, and funding grants if they meet the policies that we've already set out. I don't think we should be setting up special grant programs for this. And what it comes down to is I think society's evolved to the point that they look to government at all levels to solve all their problems. And I think that it would be better off if people worked to solve their own problems and they got support from government, not leadership from government. But I think the people should take their own leadership and that we should adopt the Independent Business Association. If there's a reason that the Business Association in Thamesford folded, I don't know what it is, but I don't think we should make the move that's been suggested here.
Anyone else? I have a question. My understanding of this report was that the recommendation was not restricted to the Village of Thamesford businesses alone. Is that correct?
That's correct. Zorra-wide.
That's what I thought, okay. Anyone else? I do support the hybrid supported association model. I do agree with some of the concerns of Councillor Mitchell, but I think that we have had an independent business association in Thamesford, and the businesses that were participating in it have said, we are not going to do this anymore. So we've had that experiment, and it's not there. Notwithstanding the idea that, well, then they voted with their feet and said, we're not going to do it, and that's their right to do it. As long as I've been on council, I have been frustrated at my inability to consult in a meaningful way with the business community in Zorra Township. I hear from the Oxford County Federation of Agriculture on issues that affect agricultural businesses, but really I've struggled to hear anything from a specific business owner about a very specific issue, and nothing about, bylaws or municipal properties that could empower businesses to do better, to be better entrepreneurs, to be more effective property and business owners. And I think that's a loss, because I think, as we all know, commercial and light industrial properties pay a higher tax rate, and that's one of the most effective ways we can defer the tax burden on residential properties. I think also with respect to businesses wanting to take the burden, or people wanting government to solve it, I think we've specifically heard from businesses in Thamesford and in Embro and in the township through the I can't remember the name of the event that Rural Oxford Economic Development Corporation put on recently, and we heard from businesses that they want the township to collaborate with them on this. We can say that they want us to, and we're not going to. It's a perfectly legitimate position for this council to take. But for all the reasons that I said, I think we need to hear from our businesses about what we're doing as a township that's not helping them, what we could be doing that would help them, and I want to hear that. And I think I absolutely share the concern of creep of municipal staff into doing the bidding of some form of business association. But I'm perfectly comfortable that our staff understand that concern and are going to manage that concern, and that will, municipal staff will be doing the work that this council dictates that they do, and not doing the bidding of another agency that we don't have oversight over. So I think there's a lot of potential in this. I especially like the idea that it is sort of a first step into this, and that it does empower, as the report says, a governance structure that would enable an independent board and leadership, but may operate under a memorandum of understanding or a service agreement. And that would clearly define then, and we'd come back to a council over to exactly what municipal staff would and would not do. So I think all the things are in place here to explore what it might look like, and it might evolve into something else. But I think we need our businesses to thrive. They're, despite all the big, huge announcements that the federal and provincial government make on huge industrial and development projects, the single largest employer in Canada, in Ontario, in Oxford, and in Zorra is small businesses. And, I often use the example of my, friends and neighbors. Ben Sheds is never moving to Mexico for cheap labor. Ben Sheds is never using to Canada, moving to China for lower labor rates. We need to invest, and we need to support those local businesses, provide local services, and employ local people, and are going to continue to do that. And I think this is a very, very responsible and progressive way to explore that with the businesses and see where it goes. So I'm very much in support of doing this. I think it's the right thing to do. And I have to say also, having struggled for 12 years to move that conversation between the municipality and the businesses forward, I'm very happy that this is, finally moving forward in this way. Anyone else before I call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 11, boards and committees. We have A, B, and C, and I guess I'll ask for the update on Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board update for Board Member Mitchell first before I ask for a motion.
Okay, latest Upper Thames Board meeting was May 26th. We started out with 3 delegations that were related to agenda item number 1, which was approval of the updated Thames River regulated area map within the City of London, which include changes to areas where an Upper Thames permit is required to develop on, and based on flooding and erosion risk changes in the last 20 years, the maps were at least 20 years out of date. The 3 delegations, first was a resident who was representing his neighborhood. The second was from Mike Wallace, who is from the London Development Institute, who attends all our meetings. And the third was a lawyer from Siskins, the law firm, who was representing a developer who would be impacted by the change in mapping. All argued that the Board of Directors shouldn't approve the new mapping for various reasons, including loss of property value and development opportunities, that we should wait until all the Thames River mapping is updated, and that the Minister directive on May 1st that no significant financial asset or employment decisions should take place until the amalgamations of the conservation authorities is finalized. They argued that that should include the map changes. Board of Directors received the delegations. We actually went into closed session to get legal advice from our attorney on the implications of not approving the updated mapping. And we also heard from staff that this has been the normal procedure when mapping has been updated, to do it a section at a time because of the vast amount of work involved, and that the work on the rest of the watershed is underway. So the board came out of closed, and we voted to approve the new mapping. We had a report on the Conservation Authority consolidation, which included the Minister's directive, that we basically are supposed to do business as usual, except for significant financial, asset, or employment decisions. The first appointments to the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency, which will oversee the consolidation, was 5 provincial government deputy ministers, and I found it ironic that one of them was the deputy minister for reduction of red tape. The province posted the project executives for each regional conservation authority. They will lead the consolidation of each of the into each of the new regionals, and they will also serve as CAO of the transition, or they will chair the transition committees, and they will also be the first Regional Conservation Authority CAOs for up to 2 years after the consolidation becomes official. The Board of Directors appointed our CAO, Tracy Annett, and our Chair, Brian Petrie, to represent the Upper Thames on the Transition Committee. And the province has also hired Ernst & Young LLP to guide transition planning and collect data, and all the conservation authorities are to provide data on 6 key areas by June 13th, so short timeline. We had a report on water and erosion control infrastructure funding, also known as WECI, approved for 2024 to 26, was a total of $1.6 million, which included $5,000 for the Embro Dam environmental assessment, and applications to WECI for 2026 to 2027 includes $34,500 for the Embro Dam removal studies. So even though we've been studying this for well over a decade, there's still more studies to come before the dam is removed. 2027 budget concepts, which will be the last Upper Thames budget, and the deadline to pass the budget is December 31st of this year. And normally we don't pass the budget until the AGM, which is the last week of February. And staff is proposing that we vote on this budget at the October 6th meeting, which is basically 4.5 months ahead of time. I raised the question, why not wait until our November 3rd meeting, which is actually the last scheduled board meeting of the year, which would give more time to revise the budget and publicize it, do all the other things that part of the budget process. I was concerned that we were rushing things too much, and staff, the response was they were concerned about, they wanted the budget passed before the municipal elections because they were concerned about that there would even be a board quorum at that November meeting. Sandy Levin and I argued that current board members are still board members until we are replaced by our new appointments, and that we had a moral obligations to come to that meeting and pass a responsible budget. So the response to that was to be determined when the vote will actually be. I'm hoping that we won't rush it as much as being suggested. We had an update on the plan to renovate the Fanshawe Conservation and Day Use area. And some of that will be included in the 2027 budget. We had a closed session update on a court case and an OLT hearing that the Upper Thames is involved in. The board approved the 2025 audited financial statements as recommended by the Finance and Audit Committee. And I had a question at the end of the meeting. There'd been public announcements recently that the Upper Thames had registered 2,114 acres of conservation authority land, including the Embro and Harrington conservation areas, with the Canada's 30 by 30 project. And I question why there was no consultation or information given to the board before that announcement came out, and the response to that was that there will be a full report on that at the June meeting. That was our meeting.
Any questions? Do I have a mover for any portion of 11A, B, and or C? Councillor Mitchell.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Finch, that items 11A to C be received and filed for information purposes only.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And item 12, information items. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, this information item was related to what I was just talking about. Conservation Authority amalgamations, moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Finch, that item 12A be received and filed for information purposes only.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. No unfinished business, no notices of motion. Bylaws. Councillor Mitchell.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Finch, the bylaws 32-26, 33-26, 34-26, and 35-26 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And items of community interest and the calendar, Councillor Finch.
I only have one. This weekend, June 6th, the Embro Family Pharmacy is having a community barbecue with the Tempsford Lions from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the fundraising is for the Embro Dog Park.
Anyone else? Councillor Mitchell and Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
Yep.
Next Wednesday, June the 10th, is Wisdom Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. at Brown School. Speaker is Bill Donaldson, and his only qualifications in the advertisement was that he's led an interesting life. So sometimes there's people that you don't know anything about that led interesting lives that turn out to be the best presentation. So it's a kind of a mystery to me. So I think I'll show up, find out how interesting his life has been.
Deputy Mayor.
Sunday, June 14th, it's the community car show at Beachville District Museum. It will actually be the first one of the season because unfortunately the first one that was scheduled in May was had to be canceled because of all of the rainfall and too much water on the grounds. So 11 till 3 p.m. at the museum, great spot for a car show, lots of shade. Check it out.
Anyone else? All right. Closed meeting session. I have a mover. Councillor Mitchell.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, second by Councillor Finch. The council move into closed meeting session at 10:56 a.m. pursuant to section 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and section 239 2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or board.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 12:02, and we're back from closed, and all we have left is confirmatory bylaw and adjournment. Do I have a mover for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Finch.
Moved by Councillor Finch, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that bylaw 36-25, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held June 3rd, 2026, be read the first, second, and third time this June 3rd, 2026.
Sorry.
And-
Oh, sorry.
And therefore, that the mayor, clerk, and are hereby authorized and sign the same, the affix corporate seal thereto.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mitchell, that this session of council now be adjourned and herewith closed at 12:03, and the next meeting of council be called for June 17th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers at the Zorra Municipal Center.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We are adjourned.